If you've come here expecting some Wolf Alice, well, you're in the right place. Or are you? Yeah, probably, I think. Because this album doesn't really sound like Wolf Alice. Or does it? Shut up. Wolf Alice, one of the most distinctive and versatile bands to come out of the UK, like, in the past decade or so. I mean, there's been loads, but I find Wolf Alice to be particularly quite good and interesting. Formed in North London in 2010, the four-piece band Ellie Roswell, Joff Odie, Theo Ellis, and Joel Joel Amey. Sorry. Forgive my ignorance. What genre, you might ask? Well, they have a bit of a reputation of shape-shifting through different genres, whilst maintaining that strong, recognisable identity. It's kind of a mixture of various things. You have grungy, shoegaze, synth pop. I don't really want to define what genre they are, but I guess they reside somewhere in that like alt-rock scene maybe, I don't know. Let's take a look back at their previous albums and see if we can decipher something. You have their debut album My Love Is Cool in 2015, balancing a bit of grunge alongside these airy, nice synths. Then 2 years later, Visions of Life in 2017, we see them push their sound a bit further with a little bit of punk here and there, or a little bit of shoegaze over here. Then the release of Blue Weekend in 2021, showing off a bit more atmospheric, cinematic, and a soft melodic side, whilst keeping that grit that they're kind of known for. But now we come to The Clearing, which kind of just sounds like a lot of indie stuff that's out at the minute, but that is kind of narrowing it down to the most extreme. Because whilst it does feel like a step backwards, even though technically it's a step forward because that's kind of what's popular now, it's not really that bad. I think if you love Fleetwood Mac, there's a lot to gain on this album. It sounds nothing like Wolf Alice, but sounds exactly like Wolf Alice. Does that make sense? Yeah, you do have some nice touches of like glam rock or like arty pop, and there are a few tracks here and there that I really do enjoy, but it kind of lacks that grit and a lot of texture that I think really drew me to them in the first place. Let's take a look at the first track, Thorns. Already it feels way more uplifting and theatrical, especially with that on-beat piano and those strings. Vocals are great, of course. I mean, they're kind of great all over this album, but as you might be able to tell, there's a noticeable difference to their previous work. Saying that though, they do manage to add some interesting textures in there. You have this distorted backing vocal, the piano sounds slightly off key, but if it wasn't for the vocals, I fear it would be slightly monotonous. I think the only interesting element that stays interesting throughout is the drumming, which just overshadows the rest of the instrumentation, I feel. This track then carries on to I'm on top of the Bloom Baby Bloom. Again, it's very upbeat, which is kind of a theme on this album, but it doesn't really get interesting for me until the chorus. Things start to really pick up. Again, the drumming really stands out here. You have these small elements of like synth key slides, these extra vocal noises and layers which help to add a bit more. I think it's the raw emotion and the themes which really do save Wolf Alice from a lot of criticism, because they do genuinely feel honest and they're always a bit of a highlight in their music. 3 songs in with just 2 girls and already I'm just getting a bit tired of that piano sound. Unfortunately, there seems to be a few songs on the album that kind of sound like this. They're just a bit like filler to me. Passenger Seat or Play It Out. They're all just a bit like inoffensive, easy to listen to, but kind of forgettable. Moving on though to Valerie, Leaning Against the Wall. And I'm quite enjoying this song actually, a bit more folky leaning, but the vocal performance is top notch here. And it's this shift in tone at the 2.5 minute marks, which really kind of breaks up the monotony of what we've already sort of heard. And I think it's like a welcome change. It's all bright and synthy, paired with these drums all the way to the end of the track, where you're kind of met with these bizarre pauses between the lyrics wall. Quite like it, weirdly. Bread, butter, tea, sugar are a few of my favourite things. Again, with that on-beat piano, but I don't mind it here. It sounds kind of nice with that gritty bass and guitar. And actually, this song is where you hear this really great mix that goes on throughout the album. And I'm kind of enjoying this cheesy, upbeat vibe of the track as well. It's funky and it really shows the band's cohesive energy. But you have these extra textures in the background, this like ghostly wail. And then when Ellie comes in with that spoken word, it feels very 80s cinematic, like Kate Bush or something. Coming to the last few tracks on the album, and things start to pick up again with Midnight. Whilst a bit more of an atmospheric track, the build up of the guitar and the strings is quite dramatic. Adding in that galloping percussion, you're creating something graceful and radiant with energy. Or take the song White Horses. This song keeps up the energy with those dual vocals, psychedelic guitar flourishes, juicy bass, and this pulsating rhythm. This song slowly becomes hypnotic, losing yourself in Ellie's acid-drenched vocals. And before you know it, you're on the last track, Messy, I mean The Sofa. And things get a little bit more relaxed. And lyrically, I'm there with the band. I can be happy and sad. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, nobody's bloody perfect. But here it really comes together alongside beautiful production, which is bizarre because you kind of forget about the rest of the album after this track, because this track was so good, because it's so full of life and emotion. It feels like I'm complaining a bit about how upbeat this album is, but I don't think it's that. There's always been uplifting elements to their music. I think it's more this shift in tone and sound. Things feel quite vanilla. Technically it's really good, but it just doesn't really stand out that much. This album just feels like they're at a bit of a crossroads, you know, which direction are they going to take? It definitely doesn't hit with that grit and sharp edges that we kind of know from Wolf Alice. But is that because the band want to take a new direction? Is this the way they're heading permanently? Even if it means leaning into sounds that kind of take away from their identity. At its weakest, the album just feels more safe than usual, weighed down really by repetition and filler, but at its best it really does hit that emotion and it has this cinematic beauty to it. But yeah, overall I did kind of enjoy this album, even though it does sound wildly different to their other stuff. So all in all, I would give this album a 7 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought down below. Is there anything you want me to do, any type of videos, things like that? Let me know. I always appreciate your comments. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, goodbye.